So hi everyone, my name is Joe Bott. I'm a senior biochemistry major at Union College. And today I want to look at DNA, mainly because I have a genetics test on Friday, but I thought this would be a great time to make a video about DNA. So some of you may have never heard about DNA. Some of you may have heard of DNA, but are unfamiliar about what it does. Some of you may know what it does, but have no idea what it looks like. So in this video, I want to make clear to you what DNA does, what it looks like, and I want to give you a little bit of the history about how it was discovered, because I think that's important. So again, I made a PowerPoint presentation that I'd like to share with you and talk about DNA a little bit. So I actually got a sneak. So, well, title slide, let's look at DNA today. So what does DNA do? DNA is the blueprint for all life. It tells the cells in your body to make certain pigments, which in turn would make your eyes blue or green. It would make your hair black or brown, your skin light or dark. It tells your body to become taller or shorter, maybe wider or skinnier. So DNA is what makes you, you. So to help kind of put the point across about what DNA does, I want to talk a little bit about one of my favorite movies, Jurassic Park. So in the movie, John Hammond here found a mosquito that was fossilized in tree sap. And they were very excited because inside the mosquito, as you know, mosquitoes go around and bite different animals and draw the blood of different animals. So millions of years ago, this mosquito went around and took the blood of a bunch of different dinosaurs. So the scientists in the movie were able to take the DNA not from red blood cells, but from regular cells that have a nucleus that have DNA. Red blood cells don't have a nucleus. But point aside, they were able to take this DNA, and in the movie they did make dinosaurs, but they went through a mysterious process not known to us, and they made dinosaurs from this DNA. And in real life, that probably wouldn't happen. I read some papers about the potential of making woolly mammoths. That might be possible. But in reality, you need some sort of egg to put DNA in. But in the movie, they made dinosaurs. And John Hammond in the movie showed the people that visited the island a little bit of a video explaining how he did it. And he made this little cartoon of Mr. DNA. But I'm going to show you what DNA actually looks like. So what is DNA? DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. And this is a structure here of what DNA looks like. It has that double helix structure is what we like to call it. And DNA is highly organized. As I showed in the last video, DNA is contained in the nucleus of a cell. So DNA must be highly organized to fit inside that small nucleus. So here's a little bit of a cartoon that DNA is compacted into these little balls called nucleosomes, which are further compacted into chromatin. And this chromatin is wrapped very tightly into that characteristic chromosome shape, that X. So in fact, I wrote down a statistic here. Let's see. So you actually have enough, if you took all the cells in your body and took all the DNA out and put all the molecules end to end, you have enough DNA to actually make it to the sun and back 300 times. Now think about that. That's millions of light years away, I believe. And you have so much DNA inside, so tightly packed, so highly organized, that you could make it to the sun and back 300 times. So I think that's pretty cool. So next slide. So what is DNA again? So like I said, it stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. Now, scientists come up with these names for a reason. So I just kind of wanted to break down a word and show you kind of what it means. So deoxy, here is one nucleotide that makes up a DNA molecule. But this deoxy part refers to not having D without oxygen, without oxy. So there's no hydroxyl group here. Ribonucleic, which means this is a ribo sugar, and acid, this is a phosphate, which is an acidic group. So you don't have to get concerned with what everything means. I just wanted to show you that every word in science, these big words, have meaning. Scientists pick these words for a reason. And here are the nitrogenous bases, also part of the DNA. So what comes together to form what this middle part is here. This is the 4 nitrogenous bases: thymine, adenine, guanine, and cytosine. And we'll get later in the video, we'll show how these specifically come together. So moving on to who discovered DNA, we have James Watson and Francis Crick. And today, when scientists make discoveries, they come up with papers to describe their findings. And these papers are 10 to 15, 20 pages long, really dense material, a lot of figures and text. And here, these guys came up with a single-page paper with, and their last line I included here. And they said, "It has not escaped our notice that the specific pairing, the coming together of nucleotides of DNA, we have postulated immediately suggests a possible copying mechanism for the genetic material." So they're saying in the last line, in the last half of their paper, they're saying the structure they came up with has a function of passing on genetic information from generation to generation. And that's the reason why we exist. It's been going on, this passing of genetic information through the mechanism that they're talking about has been going on for millions of years and is responsible for us being alive. And I think that's amazing, and they blew everyone out of the water with this. And this is one of my favorite quotes from scientific literature. So I had to include it. So how did they discover DNA? I can tell you, weren't smart enough to come up with it on their own. They had help from a lot of people, and one of the people that helped them out, one of the research of someone that helped them out was Edwin Chargaff. And what Chargaff discovered was that adenine that I showed you before, the nitrogenous base, always pairs with thymine. So A always pairs with T. And he said that C always pairs with G. Cytosine always pairs with guanine. So we have DNA has 2 strands, and on one strand, if you had a T, on the other strand in the same position, you're going to have an A. And likewise, if on one strand you have a G, on the other strand in the same spot, you're going to have a C. And that's what Chargaff came up with. So I included here a quick problem that every teacher, every biology teacher is going to ask you from middle school to high school to college. And I've gotten asked on almost every genetics exam, biology exam that covers DNA. So I want to expose you to this now. So it might be a little confusing if you haven't covered fractions and percentages, but I'm making this video so it's always going to be there for you. So the question is, if you know that a piece of DNA is made up of 30% adenine, how much guanine, thymine, and cytosine does it contain? So a hint is, well, we know if it's percentage that the total percentage is going to add up to 100%. And we know from Chargaff that the amount of adenine is always going to be equal to the amount of thymine, and the amount of cytosine is always going to be equal to the amount of guanine. So pause the video and see if you can come up with it. And next slide, we'll go over the answer. So the answer, if we have 30% of adenine, we're going to have 30% of thymine, we're going to have 20% of guanine, and 20% of cytosine. So how do we come up with this? Well, if the amount of A is always equal to the amount of T, we know that 30% A, we'd have to have 30% of T. So that's 60% total. And if we have 100% total, if we had 60% as a portion of the 100% total, that we would have 40% remaining. And if we know that guanine has to equal cytosine, we divide the 40% by 2. So we would come up with 20% guanine and 20% cytosine. So that's how we would calculate our percentages for that type of problem. So we couldn't leave out Rosalind Franklin and her contribution to the discovery of the structure of DNA. Rosalind Franklin she performed X-ray crystallography, and I'm not 100% sure on how to read X-ray crystallography. I've never performed X-ray crystallography, but I can tell you that this famous picture is what James Watson and Francis Crick used to confirm their findings and their proposed structure, that double helical twisting structure. And how they confirmed that? They used Rosalind Franklin's research. So this X here is what gave them the structure that they proposed. So her research was very essential to their discovery of DNA, the structure of DNA. So in 1962, we have James Watson, Francis Crick, and this guy, Maurice Wilkins, was awarded the Nobel Prize for their discovery of DNA. Now, unfortunately, because Rosalind Franklin did X-ray crystallography, she was exposed to a lot of radiation, and from that, she developed cancer and passed away before they were able to be awarded the Nobel Prize. And the Nobel Prize can't be awarded after you pass away. So these three guys shared the Nobel Prize for the discovery of DNA in 1962. So our conclusions today, we always have conclusions. So I hope you learned a little bit about DNA, what it is, how it was discovered, and what its function is. I want to remind you to always ask questions and always find answers. If you come up with any questions that you have, feel free to reach out to me. I've left my email below. And I'll leave you with a little joke. My family's Italian, and my mother always joked with me. She's a scientist. And she said that normal people have DNA that looks like this, the double helical structure that we talked about, the base pairs pairing together in the middle. But if you're Italian, your DNA is going to look like this twisting pasta. So if you're Italian like me, this is more what our DNA looks like. So until next time, thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you.